Hello and welcome to this lesson 14 in our Active Record series. Here we're going to look at scopes in Active Record. So a scope represents a narrowing of an Active Record database query. So here's quite a cumbersome one. User.where.not active nil.where created at less than question mark comma 1.week ago. So that's, if you're repeating that again and again, that's going to get quite tiresome. So instead we can write our scopes in our user model. This is just for an example. Scope active comma arrow and then a lambda where dot not active nil. And also we can use our recent one, make a recent scope with where created at less than question mark for our SQL query, SQL injection to the where. So we can then call user.active.recent on the user model. So this has a number of advantages. It makes it a lot easier to reuse and also enables us to avoid giving too much logic on other applications or when we are querying our model. So scopes are kind of syntactic sugar for class methods that can be called directly on the user. So scope active with our lambda and scope recent with our lambda is the same as doing self.active, which would then refer to the SQL query with the where method. So class methods are literally methods that can be called on the class user, for instance, itself, as opposed to an instance of user. And as we're making our queries to our active records, queries to our database, we are using that user model directly rather than instances of it. So these scopes are just kind of making it a bit easier to read. Default scopes are also a way of kind of ordering or adding some form of organization to your data that you want to return from the SQL. So here we've added the default scope order name. We might want to order by age. We might want to order, well, for skills, we'd want to order by name. That's the only kind of attributes we've got. We've got name and description, but we could order by anything. By default, the database just literally adds more data as it's being added, really. So it will just return a series of results as in the order that they were added. But here we can add a default scope, which will then order our results automatically by name. So if we do skill.pluck name, then that will return a series of skills in alphabetical order. If we added the method unscoped to our pluck, then we can see that we're getting the order from the database as these skills were added. So deployment with AWS was added, then Rails expertise, and then agile development. So unscoped is a way of undoing our default scope, which is set within our model. Now we can, as we mentioned earlier, we can have named scopes. Here I've decided to use a named scope and then also a class method because the starts with scope with the lambda was going to be a bit too long, so I opted for a self.starts with, but I could have done scope starts with comma arrow with the brackets of the starting string and then had the lambda, but I decided just to have it shorter version just because of the line length. One thing to remember is that lambdas do require the same amount of arguments to go into the lambda as stated, as expected, so it will show an error if you have a param for a lambda which isn't actually added in your use of the code. We open our console and we can use these methods straight away in the console. So user.starts_with J, well, only one entry in the database has a first name or a last name starting with J. Notice the percentage at the end of the starting string in our where method. That's quite a nice SQL way of allowing anything after the J, but there's just one entry with a J at the start of the name there, and we can have also user that starts with B. Now this one returns two entries because Jeff Bezos, his last name, we specified to look for first name and last name. That begins with B, and also Warren Buffett's, by coincidence, his last name starts with B. So we can also use our ordered by age method, and we can pluck the first name, last name, and the age to be returned into an array of arrays, which will show the order of our entries in age order. So we've got Warren Buffett, who's 88, Indra Nooyi, who's 63, Tim Cook, 58, Jeff Bezos, 55, and Larry Page, 46. And that's in the order of age. So we can also chain scopes, and that's another powerful aspect of these scopes or class methods. So we can say user.starts with B, .ordered by age, pluck first name, last name, and age. So here we've got Warren Buffett and Jeff Bezos because they both have B's in the first or the last name start of the first name or the last name, and we're also ordering them by age. So Warren Buffett is older than Jeff Bezos. So we can see that scopes are a syntactic sugar for class methods, and we can use class methods for longer scopes. So if you've got a scope which is stretching across the line, then you can just use a class method in order to define that scope. And scopes and class methods allow us to make active record queries more expressive rather than chained.where queries. And this can be quite a powerful system for making our code that little bit more readable, at least on the interface level, when we're kind of passing around these models and querying the database.